So, I mean, this is a flow chart that would be nice to see and to look at. So, questions that you might ask yourself first, is this a right triangle? Okay? If the question, depending on what kind of information you have. Now, if the answer to this is no, then you're going to have to ask yourself the question, do I know two angles and an opposite side, or do I know like an angle and its opposite side? So the key word here is opposite. Okay, do I know an angle and its opposite side? If the answer is yes, then you know you're going to use sine law. If the answer is no, then you're going to use cosine law, because you're probably given two sides and the contained angle, or the three sides. As I said to you guys earlier, it's always easier for me to ask myself the question, do I have two sides and a contained angle, or do I have all three sides? For me, it's easier to see if it's cosine law, and if it's not cosine law, then I know it's sine law. Okay? That's me personally. I don't know about you guys. Okay? It's easier for me to recognize this and this than to recognize as side and opposite. Okay? Okay? So after you figure out which formula you're going to use, you're going to solve for the missing variable. And then make sure the answer fits in the context of the question. And then write a final statement. This is very important, as I told you that in this unit, I will be taking marks off for final statements. So if I don't see your final statement for word problems, then you're going to lose marks. Okay? Units, final statements. Make sure you include units. When you know, like, for example, if I give you this, right, and I tell you this is 5 and this is 6, and I don't give you units, right, then you can't figure out what the unit is, so you don't leave it with units. But for example, if I say that this is 5 centimeter and this is 6 centimeter, then you know that your unit is going to be in centimeter. Okay, so be careful that sometimes you have to include units. Now, what's the rule with respect to side length and to angles? To how many decimal places do I need to leave side length? One decimal place, unless the question specifies otherwise. Okay? So if the question doesn't say to how many decimal places, you know that side length is left to 1 decimal place. How about angles?
Angles is
Whole angle. Again, unless the question specifies otherwise. Okay? No decimal point. Alright, let's look at the first question. So from the top of the Niagara escarpment, Juan sees a car below at an angle of depression of 40 degrees. He's approximately 100 meters above the car. How far is the car from the base of the escarpment? Round your answer to the nearest meter. So what do we have here? It's like a building, or it's similar to the CN Tower.
okay.
It's a
Skyscraper.
Okay. Okay. So what are we looking for here? What kind of triangle do you think that is? A right angle triangle, because your escarpment has to be vertical, right? And then your ground is horizontal.
Is that what
right?
you're talking about, like the perpendicular?
That's right. That's right. Okay? Because anything to the ground, a building, it has to be going down perpendicularly, otherwise your building is not stable. Alright. So I have a right angle triangle. What do I know? I know that from the top of the escarpment Juan sees a car below. So this is where Juan is standing, right? That's the top of the escarpment. And then this is where the car is, correct? All right. So he sees the car below at an angle of depression of 40 degrees. So where's that 40 degrees?
Where he is?
So some people are saying here, that's 40 degrees. Some people are saying no, it's here. Which one is it?
Where he's standing, and the pressure goes down.
Remember that an angle of depression, it's an angle measured from the horizontal to the object. So this is where Juan's eye is. This is where the car is. I'm gonna have to draw a horizontal line that's coming off of Juan's eyes. And this is my 40 degrees. Right? So it's not here, right? So if I draw a horizontal line coming out of Juan's eyes, this is my 40 degrees. This is what an angle of depression, okay? Which in turn, remember the Z rule that I talked to you about before? I talked to you about the Z rule, and I said that when you form a Z with a horizontal, diagonal, horizontal, then this and this, they're gonna equal to each other. Right?
So it's actually down there.
So it's actually down there. So if you do the Z rule here, okay, then this right here is 40 degrees. Angle of elevation, guys, angle of elevation, let's say Juan's here and he's looking up, right? Then again, we're gonna draw a horizontal line and this is angle of elevation. He's looking up, right? So this is where the object is, right? If he's looking down to an object, and then from the horizontal, we call that depression, or angle of depression. Okay? So we have an escarpment. We know the angle of depression. He's approximately 100 meters above the car. So what is that?
The side wing of the house.
The vertical line, right? That's a vertical line. 100 meters. The question is asking you, how far is the car from the base of the escarpment? So what am I looking for?
The horizontal one.
The horizontal line. Okay, where's my angle of interest? The 40 degrees down here, right? It's a right angle triangle, so I have to call it opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. Okay? So what do I know according to the 40 degree? What do I know? What's the opposite?
100 meters.
Okay, so that's my opposite. And then whatever I'm looking for, what do we call that? The adjacent. So if I'm looking for opposite and adjacent, what formula do I use?
So tan.
Tan. So I have tan, whatever angle you want to call it. Let's call that angle B. Tan B equals to opposite over adjacent. So tan 40 is equal to, what's my opposite? 100 over, I don't know what the adjacent is. So what do we need to do in this case?
Do you multiply 100 times 1040?
Oh, you switched those.
You switch them.
I don't know if define what 1040 is. I can skip that step. I can switch these two, right? And then the adjacent will be equal to 100 over
Okay, so
10 points. So what would be the answer for this? Now, because this is a side length, so I'm gonna have to leave it to one decimal place. So it's 119.2 meter. So now, what's my final step? Therefore, the car is 119.2 meter away from the base of the Are we okay with this? You can. You still have to divide 100 by whatever answer is. All right. Micah is standing on the ground between two buildings on the opposite side of the park. Here. The top of the first building is 152 meters from Micah. So there's two buildings, and he's standing in the middle between them. So you have building, and he's standing somewhere here in the middle on the ground, right? He has to be on the same level as the ground, okay? So this is where he is. So the top of the first building is 152 meters away from Micah at an angle of elevation of 38 degrees, while the top of the second building is 175 meters away from him at an angle of 53 degrees. So, I'm gonna have to draw a line from him to the top of the first building, and how big is that line? Yep. And then because it says at an angle of elevation of 38 degrees, where would that 38 degrees?
Oh wait, no, near Micah, sorry.
So it has to be right here,
Yeah.
right? Because his eye, that's him standing here. Horizontal line coming out of his eye, angle of elevation to the object, okay? While the top of the second building is 175 meters from Micah at an angle of elevation of 53. So this, how long is this building? How long is this line, sorry? 175 and an angle of elevation of 53 degrees. What do we know about these triangles?
They're right here.
So this is a right angle triangle, this is a right angle triangle, right? Building ground, 90 degrees. Now the question is asking you is how far apart are the top of the two buildings? Round your answer to the nearest meter. Okay? So what's the question asking you for?
The line right here.
That's right. So I'm gonna have to draw a line from here to here, and I'm gonna have to figure out how far apart are the two buildings. So I'm gonna have to figure out this. What do you want to do? Which angle? So the angle that I have here, is that what you're saying? I'm gonna have to find this angle right here. Okay, and how can I find this angle right here? Before I can find this angle by just simply, because a line has an angle of 180. A straight line is an angle of 180, right? So that means this whole thing here is 180.
Oh.
I know this part and I know this part, and it's easy for me to find the middle part because it's 180 minus the other two. Okay? So to find the angle, let's call it angle M. I'm just gonna do 180 minus 38 minus 53. What do you get? 89. So this right here is 89 degrees. Okay? Now let's look at this triangle here, because that's the one that includes the side that I'm trying to figure out. What do I know in this triangle now? Two sides and a contained angle. So what can I use to solve for the other side? Cosine law, right? And I'm looking for side M. Let's call this side. What do you want to call these two sides? I can even call this side A if you want. B and C, just to make life easy. Okay? A, B, and C. I'm looking for side A. So what do I do? A squared equal so I know what B is. So if we, to do this, remember, you either have to do the whole thing on the calculator at once, or you're gonna have to do each. So 152 squared, write the answer, 175 squared, write the answer, and then you're gonna multiply 2 times 152 times 175 times cosine 89. I'm gonna do it all together in the calculator. And then I got this. So to find A, what do I do? So I have square root. And then I got 200. And it says to the nearest meter, and this is why I said unless the question specifies otherwise, right? Because it's to the nearest meter, then I don't want to leave any decimal place. My answer is 229.78. So 229.78 is close to 230. Right? And then in meters, so that means the two buildings, the top of the two buildings. 230 meter apart. Questions about this?
So example one, is also set to the nearest meter.
Does it? Okay.
119.
So if it is to the nearest, if it says to the nearest meter, then yes, you do have to round it. I don't know why I can't go back. Oh, I'm on. Yeah, so that should be 119. Okay? So I do 9. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. I'm gonna give you time to figure out, you can work in groups, figure out example number 3.